Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
Was Joe Biden's hot mic moment an accident or another carefully planned moment in his State of the Union political rally?
So the hot mic question didn't come up for a while. And by that time, I was already in bed at the State of the Union address. I could not take it.
Yeah, that was when he was leaving the chamber.
Yeah, leaving the chamber. So he hung around for a long time just to prove that whatever he had didn't wear off. And so there you go. And somehow he gets at a conversation toward the very end of it where the question of Israel, we don't exactly know from the mic what exact questions were asked, but somehow he turns around and says, look, I've got this. I'm going to have a come to Jesus conversation with Bibi. Okay, now wait a second. First off, the last time I checked, that common nomenclature used often in America and understood as we're going to have a very serious conversation that equates to a spiritual level, to give it the most acceptable jargon.
And you are talking about the leader of the prime minister of Israel, Judaism,
Well, who just happens to be Jewish. Okay.
So you might want to have a come to Abraham meeting with him.
A come to truth meeting. We're going to have a kumbaya session. We're going to have a serious talk. But it falls down into the Scranton Joe barroom conversation. And he says to these people, now don't repeat this. We're going to have I'm going to have a come to Jesus meeting with Bibi. So he calls him by his intimate nickname. He talks to him. Okay, everything about that was just wrong. Then a staffer whispers in his ear, Mr. President,
there
got
are microphones.
Right? And Biden's response is, oh, we got a hot mic here? Good. In other words, I'm glad everybody, what I just told you not to repeat, now that I got caught, I'm glad everybody heard it. I'm excited about it, okay? Sort of like the hot mic he had the day that the Obamacare bill was signed, and he went up and he whispered into the president's ears, and everybody heard what he said, which we can't repeat on radio.
Pete, yeah, no.
We can't repeat on radio. So, okay, so the hot mic deal. This takes us back to the speech. Now, I find that gaffe, that gaffe for a man who's been in politics as long as he has been, who has seen and heard and witnessed enough international conflict. I cannot fathom how anyone would say that out loud anywhere other than in the Oval Office and maybe just to himself. I can't imagine how he could say that.
It's funny. It's coming from a man who accused Donald Trump of failing the American people with COVID and costing 1 million lives, which even CNN in their fact check had to point out. When Joe Biden took office, only 400,000 had died of COVID, number one. Number two, of that 400,000, you know as well as I do, if you had cirrhosis of the liver, if you had emphysema, if you had a heart attack and you tested positive, you didn't necessarily die of COVID, but you died with COVID. It was counted as a COVID death. So we don't even know if that 400,000 or the 1 million when we reached it a year and a half into his presidency. So anybody that would have the audacity to, lie about how many had died under Donald Trump and how he failed the presidency, well, this is a huge failure. This is a country that was invaded by terrorists. Many were raped, tortured, killed. There are still American hostages. And you are going to have a come to Jesus with a man of Jewish faith who is the prime minister of Israel that was attacked because you have an Israel problem. Well, we said the Republicans may have an A problem, abortion, but he's got an Israel problem. And if you wonder why it's hard for either Democrats or this administration or this administrative state or today's media to figure out who it's rooting for, Israel or terrorist groups and ultimately Iran, well, guess what? That's what your president is basically caught saying into a hot mic, which reminds me of his predecessor's hot mic with Putin saying, let me get through this election. And
Tell Vlad.
When I get through this election, I'll have a lot more leeway. So now you have Obama with Solyndra and Biden with electric cars. Now you have Obama tell Vlad that once I get through this election, and now you got this hot mic, we're going to have a come to Jesus.
Okay.
with
so
Bibi Netanyahu. This
back
is
to the speech.
disasters of epic presidential proportion.
Back to the speech, because just before he had the "we're going to have a come to Jesus" meeting statement with Bibi, he says in the State of the Union address. Now, again, this is a political rally. This ceased to be a State of the Union address the minute he walked in the room. It's a political rally. All of his people are lined up waiting for a political rally, and they put together the clown show of a political rally. All right. That's what they chose to do and embarrass all of us. All right. How does Joe Viggs say it?
You're embarrassing. You're insulting me, and you're embarrassing yourself.
Yeah, so they insulted all of us and embarrassed themselves and embarrassed all of us to the world. Okay. They took the choice. We, the people, are the ones who elected to put them there. All right. We got to deal with it. But at a political rally, he announces that his future administration going forward, if he's reelected, is going to be working toward a two-state solution in the Middle East. Now, there's a lot of people who hear that and go, I think I know what that means, but what does it mean? What is a two-state solution?
Well, a two-state solution would suggest that this is only a land dispute, and that if you gave them more of a portion of your land, they would suddenly be satisfied. But
Who's
don't.
they?
Palestinians, Islamists. I mean, all of this is so dated, I think, by decades. If this was 3 decades ago, the conversation would be, if you gave them more land, would that stop the fighting? And the answer is jihad is in full swing. Iran is really behind all of this. They don't want a portion of Israel. And I got news for you, America. They don't want a portion of America. They want all.
Okay, but help me understand this, though. The constituency, there's Jordan, there's Iran, there's Iraq, there's Kuwait. There's how many states are there in the Middle East? There's a bunch of states in the Middle East that cover a large landmass that are Arab and or Islamic driven.
No, they need
entities.
these few square miles.
Okay, so and then there's Israel. There's one. There's one Israel.
It's the Palestinians that are disputing territory.
What are Palestinians?
Well, they don't, as you know, technically exist. Not from a land standpoint.
Okay, so they're a group of people that has made up a name about themselves, Palestinians. And if I can get any historic accuracy on this, they might be the descendants of people who, back in 1948, when Israel was recognized as a nation and there was a war over that and the thing was settled out, these were the people whose relatives, maybe 2 generations back, were displaced from land that they were living in that now became the nation of Israel. Am I close?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a multi-generational question. Now, why didn't those people just all go to Jordan and to Egypt and to Iran and Iraq and Kuwait and Qatar? I mean, it's not like they had to drive thousands of miles to relocate. There's all kinds of countries which politically, philosophically, and religiously they're identified with. Why is it that based on that kind of displacement and war and all that stuff, why didn't they just decide, I got an idea, there's other places we could live?
They are, as you can imagine, they are not motivated historically. They are not motivated litigiously. They are motivated religiously. So you would have to go all the way back to, this could go all the way back to Ishmael versus, there's a spiritual component to this. But what's driven in, and again, this is something the West struggles with. We live every day, well, right now we're attacking faith in America, but we have lived from the very beginning with a separation of church and state. That doesn't exist in Islam. So their motive is driven more powerfully through imams than like a Declaration of Independence or a Constitution or what they're taught in school. So this is a spiritual component that has been ginned up, and it boils down to the first come Saturday. They're wanting the hidden imam to appear so that Allah will come and judge mankind. So in order to enact that, they need to first destroy Israel and then secondly destroy America. Little Satan, great Satan. Everything else, you're just playing into their hands if you try to have an intellectual breakdown of conversation. The problem with the two-state solution is it's been tried for decades. It can't be achieved because they don't want a portion of Israel. They want all of Israel. They don't want a portion of Israel. They want every Jewish person dead. So
okay. So let's back up now.
It's a very emboldening thing to say to the enemy.
All right, so you're giving me a graduate level response, and I deeply appreciate it. No disrespect, okay? But I want to go back just a second on this thing. Okay, so the war, they okay. Look, see, well, wait a minute. Why should they have to leave? Okay, a war was fought. They lost. The people that were fighting.
Well, should
for
we
them
give
lost.
France back to Germany?
Okay, yeah, okay.
That's the
right.
But these are silly arguments people have been having in college.
But yeah, but hang on just a second. So they still don't want to leave their home. So guess what? They're still there. There's two big hunks of Israel, the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, where in fact the Palestinians live and they coexist with Israel, and Israel attempts to make a safe space for them, and Israel does not go to war with them. In other words, there have been accommodations since 1948 to make space. Like, for example, the city of Bethlehem, right? That is a Palestinian city.
We discussed that over Christmas.
So there is a workout reality. It's not easy. It's not necessarily friendly, but it's been going on for decades. And it's not that there is no human respect. And I know it's not a two-state solution, but it's a both-and solution. So they've got this tepid, inconsistent balance, but they're trying to work it out. Okay. They've been trying at it for a long time. Now, nobody's happy. They try to work it out.
No, but one side can be satisfied and live with it. The other side cannot. And so it's just a matter of the sand through the hourglass before they do something aggressive, and then they get slapped back.
It's halftime here at 1850 Main Street. Time to freshen up that cup of coffee. You can start every morning off right by listening to Your Morning Show with Michael DelGiorno. Tune in to stations across America and online at the free iHeart mobile app. Get a head start on the big stories of the day, every day, with Your Morning Show on the iHeart Network.
Biden at his political rally, also known as the State of the Union Address, tells us that his administration is going to work toward the enactment of a two-state solution. Now, I go back to the 1970s and UN Resolution 242 and the fact that there are a number of states in the Middle East that have said under no circumstance will they ever recognize the legitimacy of Israel to exist. Now, if a number of states that are very closely aligned to the Palestinians and vice versa, refuse to recognize Israel's right to exist, then how in the world will it get any better with the two-state solution?
It would actually embolden them. It would embolden the aggressor.
If I'm an Israeli, what I say, okay, so now what I need to do is to create another nation that's now this much closer to where we all live, that also will agree that our destruction...
No, wait, not closer. Within their borders.
Within our borders. And
we'll
so
be
now,
safer from Al-Qaeda if we just give them New York within our borders.
There's a solution. And give them Dearborn while we're at it. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe
they already did.
Okay. All right. So this is how this is going to work. And for people that would say, whoa, that's a cheap shot. You can't say that. Hang on a second. Wait a minute. Let me just put one other thing on the table. It's been bugging the living daylights out of me. If you had told me on September 12th, 2001, that the presidential election in 2024, 23 years later, would come down to the political tactics of between 100 and 300,000 Muslims in America, American citizens voting, people of Islamic faith, that they would determine the outcome of who the president of the United States would be.
That's not hyperbole. We'd agree on with Michigan, and I say Minnesota may play a role. That's not hyperbole. They're going to 20 years later.
And you would say, what? Now, this is not a sense of prejudicially condemning the people who are citizens who exercise their rights and seize the political control of those critical regions in the country for the sake of controlling the White House. That's what they've done. And they've done it legally in plain sight.
There is something worse, though. Yes, that's a great irony. That's a great only thing left shocking in life is the truth. But that's the president of the United States in a chamber with all branches of government, speaking to the American people and the world on the commitment and state of our union. And up until that exact moment, he has an Israel problem within his party. All right, so that's politics. Then there's America, and then there's the world. All right. And basically what he did was say, for 4 months, I'm going to struggle to decide who I'm rooting for, whose side I'm on, our ally Israel or Hamas, Iran, and enemies of America and Israel. And then in that, what you call rally versus State of the Union, he picked his side.
He gave the two-state solution as the answer.
That's siding with Hamas. That's siding with Iran.
And then afterwards, he says on a hot mic,
I'm going to have a come to Jesus with, presumably,
with Bibi. Okay, so
somebody's got to say it out loud. And with friends like that, who needs enemies? And by the way, Bibi Netanyahu doesn't need enemies or friends. Israel will always be fine.
That and one other thing in the State of the Union address. So is that not, this entire process, not a play for Joe Biden to win back those Islamic votes in Michigan?
I feel that way. And I think the whole automobile bailout that's brewing or being alluded to, and all of a sudden the admission of the failure of electric vehicles.
That was my next point. He goes to the unions in that same political rally.
They're all pointing to Michigan. Everybody, John Podesta, George Soros, even old Joe, what's left of him, are convinced Michigan's going to decide this election. And wouldn't it be funny if the joke's on both of them and RFK takes the state?
Okay. One last thing about the speech I can't resist, and that was Joe Bag of Chips. Just in case.
You know what? You really can't do this. You cannot do this, because out of everything, and, I see tens of thousands just disappearing. I'm like, where did it go? And it went to gas and groceries. But people haven't even noticed yet, skyrocketing insurance. I'm wondering where all my money's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it's gone. Inflation. But when I always think of the pot roast. I'm holding a pot roast in my, I like pot roast. I don't even know how they're serving it at the Chop House in Franklin, Tennessee, and not losing money. I got a pot roast in my hand, and it's $68. And I'm like, are you kidding me? $68 for one pot roast. I have never in my life, David, I put it down. I put it back. But you were appalled, and you're constantly bringing up either Tostitos, Doritos, or potato chips at being $8 a bag. So you're like Joe.
Joe Bag of Chips decides he's going to defend the insane inflation driven by his energy policies, primarily driven by his
the whole thing was a
gaslight,
but right? Yeah, go ahead.
And he's going to say that it's all about shrinkflation, and there's fewer chips in the bag and fewer Snickers in the bags. But then the cameras all immediately plan to Bob Casey, who's running for the Senate in Pennsylvania, because Joe Biden's got to make sure, just in case you thought it was all about Michigan, I still plan on winning Pennsylvania too, and I'm going to win Pennsylvania because Casey's going to win me Pennsylvania because he's going to win that Senate seat.
Which is possible, but...
Then you see the loop closing and all the pieces coming together. Great political rally. Whoever wrote the speech, and they still haven't told us who wrote the speech.
A tragedy as a country, a tragedy as a State of the Union.
Beautiful political rally.
Did you know that you can hear Michael and David every day on your morning show on the iHeartRadio network? You can tune in daily or log on live to the free iHeart mobile app. Get a head start on the big stories of the day every day on your morning show. Then join us here where the conversation continues. Subscribe today so you don't miss a minute, and visit 1850mainstreet.com to find out more. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.